I never like to express unbelief, but inside I'm thinking, how is this guy with this accent from a different culture going to reach Jewish people? He had these ideas that wound up being marvelously successful.
Hi, everyone. We just wanted to welcome you to World Mission Outreach. I'm your host, Lisa Griggs, and we are going to get in today to our segment of Meet Our Partners. Right now, we're going to be introducing Pastor Rob Thimberg. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and that story of how you ended up in Maui, Hawaii.
My family, mother and two sisters, had moved to Hawaii in the 1960s, I guess. That I was a little bit estranged from my family in those days. I wasn't a believer, that I didn't really care to go with them. I had my own life. I was working in the corporate world, and they invited me out, sent me a ticket. And so I came to Hawaii in 1973, and it was there that I met my first Christian. Just wanted to reconcile. I was raised Jewish, so I wanted to reconcile, what is this biblical Christianity? How does that have anything to do with Judaism?
You were actually considered a Messianic Jew. Is that
Yes.
what you would call yourself? Okay.
Well, it wasn't in 1974 when I accepted the Lord. There was no such term as Messianic Judaism even back then. What was known and used and discussed was the idea of a fulfilled Jew. That the Jewish prophets talked about the Jewish Messiah coming to the Jewish people in fulfillment of Jewish prophecies that pertain to every Jewish person.
How much does the cultural part, with regard to the Jewish community that's there on Maui, are you just only reaching out to those that are Jewish? And then also, how much does that play a part, I guess, in the world today? Because we see so much right now, anti-Semitism, even in the church.
If you came on Sunday morning when I'm pastoring the church, Grace Church, you would not be able to tell that there was anything other than a traditional evangelical Pentecostal church. What we started recently was a Shabbat service, and that's something we used to do in the past, and that is on Friday night, and we do a lot of the traditional Jewish things in that. So we have Jewish songs, we teach Hebrew, not a lot of Hebrew, not a classroom, but just to teach Hebrew songs or Hebrew blessings. And then we go into the Jewish roots of the New Testament.
Right. So, culturally, I think right now in the world, how does that play a part in what you're doing there in Maui, being Jewish, but also being a pastor?
Yeah.
This is like
That's the
like the
question
most
I get more
awesome
than any
interview
other
ever.
question. I told one person there's only one question that I get more frequently than that, and it is, how did you get a woman like Nora to marry you? She's such a special person. But well, you've asked a few questions. I think that knowledge goes a long way in stemming the tide of anti-Semitism. When people realize Jesus was a Jew, the scriptures and the covenants, as it says in Romans chapter 9, it's all committed to the Israelites. And so that every person of every race and kindred and tribe should want to know about the heritage that the Jewish people have.
Mhm.
Now, what it started with a satanic desire in the heavenlies to extinguish the Jewish race because they had the covenants and the promises in the scripture. And so that has been going on a long, long time.
You met Henry and many, many years ago, and they've been a friend, for many, many years.
Very close friend,
And
very dear friend. Yeah.
I want to hear more about that. How did you meet Henry? And then was World Mission Outreach already in play? Was this like planned, 30 years
Not
ago?
World Mission Outreach was
Yeah.
not, but Hawaii Jewish Outreach was. So he comes bounding into my office and with his inimitable accent from Costa Rica. And he says, I'm here to reach Jewish people, and I heard you were Jewish. He introduced himself to me, and I said, yes, I am Jewish. He said, well, I want to reach Jewish people. And I'm thinking, I want to reach Jewish people too. But first of all, if I wanted to, I'd go to New York or California or some of these, or Israel. wouldn't come to Hawaii. And second, you don't sound like a New York Jewish person like I am. You sound different. So he was a curiosity to me, but he's got such a pure spirit and such devotion and passion. You can't help but like Henry when you meet him. And he can get away with saying anything because he's not motivated by anything but love. And so Henry said, I want to do it. And you know, I never like to express unbelief, but inside I'm thinking, how is this guy with this accent from a different culture going to reach Jewish people? And how many are there? Well, I found out there are about 5,000 Jewish people living in Maui, but very few of them identify as practicing Jews. I mean, 1%, 2%. So we're not talking about a lot of people. So I'm thinking, how do you reach people that won't even come out of the woodwork and say, I'll meet you at synagogue, or I'll go to a Jewish event, or pro-Israel, whatever. And so he had these ideas that wound up being marvelously successful. He found among Gentile believers a desire to reach Jewish people. And he said, we want to do a dinner, a free dinner. Well, there's no better way to reach Jewish people than through food. And so he's came up with the idea of Jewish people sharing testimonies. He asked me to do it. He asked my wife to do it. He asked a number of prominent Jewish people in the islands to share their testimony of coming to faith. And so with all of that, he was very successful. He would rent these large venues in hotels, and then he would get sponsors for tables, like 8 or 10 people at a table. And he would fill the banquet room with 100 people. And then Jewish people would share their testimony. And of course, the big question for Jews is, how can you be Jewish and believe in Jesus? And so when you hear from the lawyer who's a Jewish person, believes in Jesus, or you hear my background and my wife from Israel, originally from Iran, when you hear their stories, it becomes palatable to Jewish people, because American Jews have a resistance to having anything to do with Jesus or Christianity. And that's associated, rightfully or wrongfully, with anti-Semitism, historical anti-Semitism. So with that, Henry was having success after success. It was amazing to me. There were many people, prominent people, came to faith in the Lord, and many people would show up at his events. It was great. And then it expanded from there to World Mission Outreach, because he would go to places in Africa or Far East, and he would have, in Thailand, he'd have a meeting, and he'd say, we're going to do a Shabbat dinner for Israelis. And in Thailand, there were a lot of Israelis going there for tourism, and he would get dozens of people together. It was amazing to me. But he is the only person I know that adheres to the scriptural precept that you mentioned, which is to the Jew first and also to the Greek. There's only one other ministry I know of in the whole world that makes any effort at all to reach the Jew. And so I commend Henry. It's very honorable. Anybody that does anything in strict accordance with the scripture deserves to be honored, in my opinion. So he's almost unique in that. He reaches Jewish people, and he does it effectively. So his World Mission Outreach has been expansion of that. Now he does crusades in all over the world.
Do you have any final thoughts, just, overall about World Mission Outreach, Henry and my mom, Darlene?
I think it'd be best to talk to the fruit, the people that actually come to faith through their ministry. And I know that there's one well-known Hollywood actor that came to faith because Henry lovingly confronted him one day about the gospel. Was he going to live in the world, or was he going to live for God? And that person chose to live for God. He still does, as far as I know.
Thank you so very much for being with us today.
My privilege. Thank you.
And we appreciate you so much from our family here at World Mission Outreach. We love you, and we love Grace Church. And thank you so much for all that you've done over the years to help support this ministry and to get the gospel out.
Thank you.